Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Marianne, would you call the roll, please?
Here. Here.
Here.
Here. Our president, Mr. Grissom, had to be out of town on business today, so as vice president, according to the board policies, I'm going to preside over the meeting today. First thing today, a lot of smiley faces are a recognition, so Gina, you're going to give them out with Kristen, right? Student recognitions. The Kettle Moraine Press Association released their awards for publications from the 2017-18 school year. The Rouser earned a second place distinction in a student yearbook competition with a perfect score in the style and appeal category. Special recognition goes out to the student editors from last year, class of 2018. Guillermo Artiga, Nicole Dirkos, Millie Hernandez, Kathleen Mahoney, Mary Padilla, and Allison Prash. Raziel Carmona, Audrey Connolly, Olivia Meyer, and Serena Palau. And now we'll move on to athletics. We'd like to recognize the following 2018 fall athletes. For girls cross country, all regional athlete, all sectional athlete, IHSA regional champion, IHSA sectional 12th place, all conference athlete, Tara Janey.
Tara here.
All regional athlete, all conference athlete, all academic athlete, Nadia Kazmars. All academic athletes, Neela Callanan, Callie Carlson, Marissa Drake, Sylvia Harvin, Cora Lutz, Jessica Mankione, Zoe Mazurkiewicz, Melissa Olivera Liz, Samantha Perez, and Isabel Rurka. Let's see. For girls golf, IHSA sectional qualifier, IHSA state qualifier, all conference athlete, all academic athlete, Kiana Keene. IHSA sectional qualifier, all academic athlete, Isabel Hughes. All academic athletes, Tess Bruno, Eva Funaki, and Jillian Gaines. Girls swimming, all conference athletes, all academic athletes, Sophie Bruno, Veronica Caravo, Claire Kowicki, Sarah Paluski, and Madeline Wenig. All conference athletes, Allison Brand, Mary Izzo, Cecilia Rosa. All academic athletes, Maria Ellercon, Shay Connolly, Morgan Dawn, Alana Davis, Elizabeth Donahue, Noelle Harrison, Michelle Jacobs, Abigail Regan, Sarah Struby, Brooke Wobeldine, and Grace Wobeldine. One of the girls made it to state, right?
Yes.
So
Madeline Wenig.
we could have more to come on this one. Girls tennis, all academic athletes, Jillian K. Kadungug.
How do you say that, Julie?
Say how you say it.
Okay.
Did I
Come
do
on
it?
up, Julie.
I just stay up here for your teammates, honey. Sarah Dornbus, Molly Durkin, Sarah Gersh, Kathy Pribble-Pertinack, Megan Reardon, Evelyn Roth, Kathleen Mary Sherrick, and Grace Tabor. Congratulations. Girls volleyball, all-conference athlete, all-academic athlete, Leah Retke. All-academic athletes, Marlena Barreto, Annalisa Sinke, Georgiana Gamorsek, Joy Greco, Taylor Jurgens, Mazzy Mercucci, Audrey Santora, McKenna Sloan, Abigail Swiatek, and Carol Twomey. Sorry about that. Congratulations.
Thank you for coming, Carol.
Yeah. Boys cross country, all regional athlete, all conference athlete, all academic athlete, David Keene. All regional athletes, all academic athletes, Joshua Ramft. All academic athletes, William Briolet, Evan Dunbar, Adrian Herrera, Christopher Magno, Connor Raymond, Alexander Thomas, and Quinn Van Nuys. Football, all conference athlete, all academic athlete, Luke Gentile. All conference athlete, Dominic Rowe. And all academic athletes, David Ebaldi, Brian Crossman Demowski, Daniel Hillier, Raheem Kafaragi, Matthew Lambs, Robert Murphy, Sebastian Patino, Connor Pitts, Eric Pullen, Elliot Royer. Oh, I'm sorry, Eric. Excuse me. Thanks for coming. You can stay up and wait for your teammates if you want. Elliot Royer, Riley Shaw, and Antonio Vargas. Thanks for coming.
Good job, Antonio. Thank you.
Boys golf, IHSA sectional qualifier MVP, Christopher Robertson. IHSA sectional qualifier all academic athlete, Jackson Fields. Bulldog Award all academic athlete, Kyle Platt. And all academic athletes, James Berger, Benjamin Harrison, Ricardo Linares, Ian Roth, and Benjamin Udelson. And last but of course not least, our boys soccer team. All sectional athlete, all academic athlete, Aaron Palmer. All conference athlete goalkeeper of the year, all academic athlete, Daniel Sessler. All conference athlete, all academic athlete, Joshua Villalobos. Villalobos. All conference athletes, Xander Sanchez and Axel Martel. And all academic athletes, Brendan Chaika, Garrett Foy, Trace Haig, Matthew Hansen, Kyle Paith, and Ryan Power.
I'd like to thank all the parents and the student athletes that came out here tonight. If I'm not mistaken, every athlete that was recognized was also an all-academic athlete that was here tonight. So as a superintendent, I know I speak on behalf of the board when I say that it's important to us that you're involved in our extracurricular programs and that you've achieved great things, but I think it's even more important to the board that you're also able to achieve high academic standards while being involved in extracurriculars. So keep up the good work. If you're seniors, finish this year strong. Don't get senioritis. And if you're involved in a winter sport, have a good winter season. Okay? And this is usually the best time to run for the doors unless you want to stay for the board meeting. You're welcome to stay. It's an open meeting.
Is the student association here?
I don't think so.
Kristen? Is the Student Association here today?
No, they're not.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna wait.
So we think we gave, gotta revisit that. Mary Ann made like 156.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Finish the year strong. Keep up the good work.
We'll move on the agenda. Next is reports, Student Association. I understand they were unable to come today. The President's report, he was unable to come today. Superintendent's report, he's here.
Okay, so before I begin, the Illinois Association of School Boards does recognize board members in years of service. Gary Gritchen and Tim Walsh both receive level 1 recipients. That's with over 8 years of service. So they each get a lapel pin.
Oh, thank you.
So that's Tim's lapel pin. And we have one master school board member for all of her time and hours that she has dedicated. And she gets the master school board plaque. And that goes to Miss Laura Haruska for all her years of service with the Illinois Association. And Laura also serves as our delegate representing District 208 this weekend at the school board conference when they will vote on the Iasb Resolutions. And we have some that are on the discussion items for tonight's agenda. So, but I wanted to start off by recognizing our board members. Curriculum Advisory Council, I have no update. Facility Advisory Council, the pre-bid walkthrough was this morning. We did have several contractors come out. That's for the pool unit, and that work is scheduled to occur May through July 3rd. We're keeping our fingers crossed knowing how construction works. The bids are going to be due 2 weeks from today, so November 27th, and then we will be bringing to the board a recommendation for the December 11th board meeting. Also under the Facilities Advisory Council, we had talked briefly, Aramark is our service provider for both custodial and maintenance, and their contract is up next year. After discussion with the Facilities Advisory Council, we did think that it might be better to do a 2-year extension with Aramark. And so I'm working with Joel Hatchie on that and to see if we can negotiate a 2-year extension. And usually when you do those types of extensions, Aramark does provide a grant that can be used for a capital project at the building. So we're working on that. I have some ideas of capital projects that also could be contributed to. So we'll see what happens. And I hopefully will have an amendment and a recommendation to the board in December. The district manager that supervises Joel Hatchie, our facilities manager, did not have, actually was very happy to do a 2-year extension. And so they're just working with their legal department to get us a first draft of an amendment. Finance Advisory Council. Yeah, we also are working with ComEd and NICOR for energy efficiency as we redo the pool unit, and we're also looking at we've systematically done each floor within the building, changing over the fluorescent fixtures and incandescent fixtures into LEDs. So now we're working with a specific contact at both NICOR and ComEd to help us identify the largest rebates or any areas where we can get cost-saving dollars for these new projects. So we're working with them. Finance Advisory Council reviewed the first draft or first read of the levy that the board will see tonight. The board needs to approve this in December, and Scott needs to deliver that to the county building before the end of December. There is no update on personnel advisory, and there is no update on policy advisory.
That moves us on to the principal's report then.
This week is Microsoft's annual Skype-a-thon, where thousands of students, teachers, and experts from around the world connect virtually. Some of our world language classes are participating in this event this year. So today, students in 2 periods took a virtual field trip to a volcano in El Salvador. Tomorrow, students in a language class during 6th period will talk about language and culture with a teacher in Nigeria. And then on Friday, during 4th period, students will take a virtual field trip with a National Geographic explorer in India. So I wasn't able to see the field trip today, but I'm looking forward to jumping in and seeing the other events later this week. We have an upcoming presentation for parents through Student Services. It is called College Planning Kickoff Night for juniors and their parents. It's probably one of the most popular events that they hold, and it's held on Tuesday, December 4th at 7 p.m. in the Auditorium. It's a panel of college admissions experts that provide a number of helpful planning tips as students and their parents begin the college planning process and the search process. Lastly, it's the time of year where we have a lot of fine arts events, and so our Repertory Dance Ensemble has their show next Thursday and Friday at 7 p.m. in the Auditorium. This show is the beginning of, like I said, a few other upcoming fine arts events. We have the Winter Art Show, which will be held in early December, as well as the Chamber Orchestra concert, and then probably the most popular concert of the year is the Winter Holiday Concert, and that is December 5th and 6th in the Auditorium at 7 p.m. In Board Book tonight, I also have some additional reports. The first is the school report card, which begins on page 8 in Board Book. Last board meeting, I reviewed the changes to the school report card and wanted to share the actual report card as a follow-up. It is also posted on RB's website. There were a few questions that were submitted that I'd like to go over and then answer any additional questions that you may have. So the first one was on page 8, and it was on chronic absenteeism. So that is the percent of students that are absent for 10% or more during the last school year, including excused and unexcused absences. If you look closely at the state averages, you'll see that they don't make sense, and the state has since updated their averages, and so we'll be able to update our school report card on our website. Their state average is actually 17%, and so all of their averages across the board will change. On page 9 of Board Book, there was a question about teacher information. We are not required to collect information on the race of staff members, and we don't ask them to provide that to us, so we don't report out on that. Also on this page is teacher attendance.
But is it a common practice that schools don't report?
I don't know that answer. I can certainly look into it, but I don't know.
Something's wrong anyway, because we couldn't possibly have .1 be white, right? So there's some error. I thought it was just
There were 2 teachers that were with us last year, or staff members, I should say, not necessarily teachers. They were with us last year that are not with us this year, and that data was in the system.
I know,
I did look into that.
.1 is a tenth of a person.
That's the information that I gathered. So
Is that something the board wants us to ask? We're not, I mean, a teacher's not required to report that on our application system.
Can you ask them?
You can ask them, it's voluntary. I just got one just last week. They asked us one for everybody in our company, if you report if you had a disability.
Oh, yeah, for
It's
those,
completely
yeah.
voluntary. The advantage of doing it is to see whether have a diversity in our staff similar to the diversity in our community and our student body, right?
yes, but if all staff don't do it, then that number is not going to be accurate, and we're not going to have an accurate representation of that. So that's the challenge with that information.
Whatever we get is better than you're saying, because everybody won't do it, don't ask anybody, because you don't want anybody to be in the unknown category. What's the downside on us asking the teachers whether they're willing to say what their race is?
We certainly can ask. I'm just saying that unless all the staff does it, we're not going to necessarily
said
know
that.
whether or not there's
Could we just ask the union to report out on it? Would they have that? They might be able to do that.
You shouldn't you should make it voluntary. If you're going to do it, we should do it on a voluntary basis and ask the teachers to respond themselves if they want to.
I'll work on it. That's why I'm
Maybe-
asking direction from the board.
I mean, what do people think? we want, I mean, especially since we're reporting it. Should we ask people whether they voluntarily provide the information?
How does the state get their information?
Sure, the same way.
We have to input it into the system. So it's obviously something we haven't been asking for on our applications or tracking in our EIS system. That's where we put like our state salary information that the board looks at every October. So what we would probably do is just have to do an individual survey, like you said, voluntary, and ask staff to fill it out.
The reason I asked the question, Kristen, is assuming the state information has some accuracy, like there's 130,000 teachers in the state, they only came out with 2.3% unknown. That means other people are gathering the information pretty readily, right?
Could also be pulled off of their license program, so where people are applying for their license, they're filling it out at that point, but maybe not at the application process in the district.
Well, then maybe we should go to the state and say, how do you get the information? Could we get it from you? And you don't even have to ask the teachers.
Yeah, let me look into this with Scott and Aileen Huber in our HR department.
My comment, I have the same sentiment that Tim was saying. You know, it's voluntary, and so the unknown number will be there. So if it says 50% are unreported, 50% unreported. But it might show the distribution of our staff in the community, and are we representative? Do we have anything to hide? Do we not? I don't think it's a bad thing if people volunteer to give that information.
But we're only being, but I think, let's say we ask and only 40% answer, and it shows that 99% just saying are white. That really doesn't tell us how diverse our staff is if only,
Well, it wouldn't do
right,
that.
like
It
we'd
would
almost
show-
need an answer from
It would show
everyone to be able to.
40% unknown,
Well,
60%.
Right, it would show, right,
Yeah.
that we, out of half of the people who volunteer that information, I mean, if we're proud of the diversity of our staff, we want to show that.
Let's start with the first thing. Somebody talk to the state and find out how they got the information. If they were able to get it off some licensing information, it's probably, they wouldn't even give it to you. It's FOIA-able. Try to get it from the state.
Well, I certainly know,
Start
like,
there.
the state, the state gets our data, particularly from what we report, but we can check to see how the state gets their overall aggregate data.
Okay.
And we can go from there, certainly.
Thank
We
you.
can also add this to our application process,
Right.
so that, I'll work with Scott and Aileen,
Well,
Ms.
make sure you
Huber.
talk to our outside counsel.
Yeah, I mean,
before
it would
you
be
do that.
voluntary,
You might
right?
not be able to ask somebody when they're applying what race they are.
Well, I think you just have to label it as a voluntary
Right.
question.
Okay.
But obviously, if the state's reporting it, somebody's filling it out somewhere.
Right.
But that's why I wanted to ask the board
Good question.
your preference.
Assuming that our 101 is in that
30,000.
130,000, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll work on it.
It's going to be coming from somewhere.
We could probably get it from somewhere else.
Okay, Kristen, go on to the next one.
The next item on that page, there was also a question on teacher attendance. So as again, this is the percent of teachers who are absent 10 or fewer days in the school year. This doesn't include professional development or FMLA leaves or when they go on a field trip. This has been a common trend for the past several years, I believe in part due to the built-up number of sick days that some teachers have. I think there are some language issues in the contract that may lend itself to this problem. We roughly spend around $200,000 a year on subs. But again, this has been a consistent pattern for the past 7 years.
Yeah, can I just jump in with a question? It's probably not even a question, more of a concern. I went back a couple years just to see, because I was curious the last couple of years. And so like in 2016, it was 74%, and now we're at 68%. So like as a parent, I'm just concerned about the negative impact on student achievement when, I mean, even just tonight, actually, my son said to me, Mom, I had 3 subs today. Seems like I have a lot of subs. I said, okay, what do you say to that? But my concern is just on the impact on student learning, because it seems to me to be a lot, right? So 32% of our teachers are absent more than 10 days a year.
Correct.
Is there any effort at all to maybe have a committee to look at incentives for teacher attendance, or Has anything in the past been done of that nature? Do you know?
In regards to, we offer a incentive for, I believe we do a $50 gift card every year for teachers that have perfect attendance or support staff that have perfect attendance. The amount of sick days and the amount of sick days that you can accrue are part of the collective bargaining agreement. I know that they have been discussed in the past, and I will add that to our list for the upcoming negotiations.
I mean, I find it ironic that we spend a half hour at a board meeting talking about student attendance, trying to get it even higher, in the high 90s. And
then
it's
board goal.
okay to be at 68% for our teacher attendance. It's really not okay.
I don't think anybody here said that
Right.
it's okay.
I mean, just even the state 70 or 60, you know, if the students see that, and we're doing everything possible to get that attendance in the high 90s, it's just.
So if we could look at some type of incentive, just something to try to get that number.
Get people to show up. I
Right,
Gotcha.
Right.
On page 10 of Board Book, there was a question about the expenditure by function. There are the 4 functions that are listed: instruction, general administration, which is the superintendent and the Board of Education expenses, supporting services, and other expenditures. Other expenditures consist of life safety, capital projects, debt service, LADSI, and then also community expenses such as age group gymnastics, things of that nature. And so that
So
is
it's
all
cap-
accounted
this
for
is-
in the 31%.
That's just, it says expenditure, but it includes capital projects.
Correct.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
That's that's the main reason we're high.
Correct. On page 11 of Board Book, there was a question about CTE. CTE is career and technical education classes, so it really encompasses all of our applied arts department and their classes that they offer, such as business and marketing, family consumer science, technology, engineering, and as you can see, the state just reports out on the number of students taking a course.
So that's the 528 kids that took one course last year, or what does the 528?
Yes, correct.
Stand for?
Yeah, the number of
Okay.
students that enrolled in a CTE course during last school year.
Okay.
The next question that was submitted was on page 19 of Board Book. And, oops, one second. It was a question about the performance of our African American students on the SAT. I think this is an example of what I was trying to explain at the last board meeting. So at the junior year, can be a very small subgroup. And so the performance of a few students can significantly have an impact on the overall performance. But we do look at the disaggregated data of our students to identify any additional supports that we can provide subgroups of students as well as the entire population. And when we're looking at SAT performance too, we also need to keep in mind that the state has a much higher benchmark than our college board benchmarks and what they set. So just as a reminder, the math benchmark from College Board is 530 and the state benchmark is 540. And for ELA, there's a much bigger discrepancy. The College Board benchmark is 480 and the state benchmark is 540.
Do you
Also,
happen to know if our black students are kind of evenly distributed between the 4 years?
I do not know that information.
So it
off the
says
top
there's
of my head.
90 in total. We don't know if there's like 22 or 23 juniors that number's based on, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And then the last question submitted on the school report card was on page 27 of Board Book. And this data is reported by LADSI and it's sent directly to the state. And we've been working with LADSI to get access to this data so we can correct it moving forward, but that's
I
why
think
you
you told
see
me
that
that
there's
last
a
year
zero.
too.
Mhm,
Yeah, we
we're
don't have
still-
early childhood.
We're still working on it.
Okay.
Then also another report that I have, if we could jump ahead to page 36 in Board Book. This was added today because we were working through the paperwork and the logistics, but I wanted to present it to you just as a first read. I'll be looking for approval at the December board meeting, but this is a request for the JV cheer team to go to the ICCA championship. So that's the Illinois Cheerleading Coaches Association championship in Springfield. They haven't qualified yet, but if they do, since both of the qualifying competitions are in December, it'll be a really tight turnaround time. So I wanted to present this to you today as a first read. The cost per student, which includes registration, hotel, food, and bus, is $223 a student, which would be offset by a lot of the fundraising that they've already done throughout the season.
Do you want to have Brendan come up? So if the board has any questions on that, Brendan, can you come up now since you're giving the fall athletic summary? So one question I know the board may ask is, why are we doing an educational tour for this since we don't do educational tours for any of the other state series? Do you want to comment on that, or you want me to comment on that?
Well, I think primarily it's due to the fact that it's a junior varsity level, and it's really the only sport that entails a junior varsity competition at the state series. So again, as mentioned earlier, they need to have qualifying marks on, I believe it's the December 1st and December 15th competitions to earn that privilege to move on to the next level.
So the varsity is in a different series, and if they move because...
Varsity's in the IHSA.
Okay.
So we learned about this last year, and it kind of came down like last minute, and there was a lot of scrambling going on, and then there was supervision issues, bus issues, so we looked at board policy, and the board, talks about how it's IHSA, and this is not an IHSA like JV state series.
Right.
However, that being said, seeing that parent interest that we received last year, we talked with the coaches, and I think that's what they submitted to Kristen and Brendan, and so we made clear to them, like, this is no different than doing like a summer tour, like when you go to a camp or something of that nature, since so it has to be self-funded.
You might want to look at some of the numbers, like, I hope they're not going to drive home from Springfield in 2 hours on a bus. That concerned me a lot, because they'd have to go like 100 miles an hour to do that. So, just some of the things,
Sure.
I think there's some type, and the hotel information, it doesn't add up. It's like, the total's like twice as much as what you're showing per person, so.
I'm sorry,
The
could you repeat that?
the hotel cost is that what is listed is per person. They're going to be sharing a room, but the cost that each student has to pay is the
And 142 times 2 is
$2.
280. There's 16 students. 8 times 280 is $2,100. And I assume there's a separate room for a chaperone, and it's showing it's $4,500. Something's wrong with the math on it. And then the last thing is for the registration, they're paying $25, and it's going to cover their food all day on Saturday, whether in a hotel in the morning, but food too.
Registration for $25, is that what you mean?
Yeah, that covers the getting into the event
Their
and their
participation
food.
fee.
Okay. You might want to check that. There's just a
Well,
couple things you might want to
sure.
check on it.
That's why we brought it as a first read, and because it came in such short notice, so we figured at least if the board understood the concept, then they can tighten up the numbers and get all the information and bring that back to the board for approval in December.
Thank
Does
you.
the board have any concern with the JV team participating in a non-IHSA series, or are you okay with that as long as it's self-funded by the team?
It's self-funding. I
Yeah,
don't see a
self-funded.
problem, do you?
No problem with that.
Okay, so as long as the numbers are cleaned up, I don't think it should be a problem for the board to give approval in December.
Okay.
Brendan, you want to start with your report?
Sure. Good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Tonight I'm going to touch on the fall athletic summary as well as our participation numbers for the fall season. As recognized earlier in tonight's meeting, throughout the 9 sports we offered this past fall, we had 19 athletes earn all Metro Suburban Conference status, 12 girls and 7 boys. We had just under 100 of our varsity athletes earn all academic Metro Suburban Conference status, 52 girls, 38 boys. What your summary outlined does not include is we had 2 additional female athletes qualify for the state finals competition. 1 cross-country runner, Tara Janney, and 1 girls swimmer, Madeline Wenig. This brings our total of state series competitors to 3 when you include Kiana Kiki Keen. And both Madeline and Kiki are sophomores, so that forecasts a bright future for their respective sports. In regard to our program participation updates, excited to report that our program saw nearly a 4% increase in participation, 419 versus 405 in 2017. The sports that experience an increase in participation are girls tennis, boys soccer, boys cross country, and boys golf. On the other side, on the flip side of that, I realized that there may be concerns regarding the number of girls in the girls golf program. Please know that the low number of participants in golf was identified early on in the school year, early on in the season. We did put together a plan that would attempt to increase the roster numbers. Unfortunately, that plan did not provide the results we desired. I think it should also be noted that out of the 11 regular season competitions, only 2 of our opponents had a JV team, which meant that most of our opponents only had a varsity team, if you will. Moving forward, the girls golf head coach position will soon be posted due to our current or former head coach retiring at the end of the school year. Now, whether it's an out-of-building candidate or an in-building candidate, obviously there will be an emphasis and a priority placed on identifying and putting in a plan much further in advance that will increase the number of participants in an effort to have both the JV level and a varsity level. To compete at either level, you need to have 6 golfers. Shifting gears, overall girls sports saw a decrease of 5 athletes this year compared to 2017, while our boys sports saw an increase of 23 student athletes compared to 2017. National studies show that there's been over an 8% decrease in girls' youth sports participation, girls aged 6 to 12 years old over the last decade. And it's possible that we're feeling a little bit of a trickle effect on children opting not to participate, and that could be due to a variety of reasons, some which, but certainly doesn't limit it to limited opportunities, household resources, as well as the shift from recreational sports to travel sports, or the in-house programs to travel sports. I think the bottom line is with girls that are at that junior high level, it's kind of all or nothing, right? Whether that's just kind of jumping all in on a travel team to get that experience to prepare you for the high school level. So I feel as though we're seeing a little bit more of the individualized athlete on the female side of things. But that's kind of where we're at in terms of kids that are entering Riverside, Brookfield with that opportunity. So obviously it's something that we're aware of and we will address moving forward. As a first-year assistant principal of athletics, who is about to conclude my first semester, I realize there will be ebbs and flows within our athletic programs. However, it is our goal to provide the RB student athlete with the resources in order to achieve excellence both in the classroom and in the athletic arena. I can tell you that I have been in contact with every coach of every sport in the building and outside of the building coaches, and they're all very aware that my door is always open. Communication is critical to me because I believe it fosters positive relationships and lends itself to sharing that necessary information. In closing, tonight starts the winter season, if you will. Our girls varsity basketball program is taking on Deerfield High School at the Maine East tournament. And as mentioned earlier, our fall season comes to a conclusion with this Saturday's girls state final swim series at Evanston High School. That concludes my end of the report. Are there any questions?
All right, questions? I have one question. It's your first chance to get this one. How do you evaluate the coaches and determine whether we should offer them a position again next year?
Sure.
When you look at some of the records, and again, I realize the students and the participation ebb and flow, but
Well, I think there's a lot of contributing factors. In fact, we have an evaluation sheet and we have weekly meetings throughout the course of the season to identify what their goals and objectives are as they progress through the season. And then at the conclusion of the season, we'll also have a sit-down one-on-one meeting to identify the needs, wants, and where that program's at and where that coach is at in terms of his short-term plan, whether his or her short-term plan, whether that be identifying what they need to do in the off-season to better prepare their student athletes going into the next season, as well as a 5-year plan. Moving forward, it is my goal to implement some type of evaluation or survey system, if you will, that would go out to students as well as parents. Right now, we're basically, coaches are encouraged to survey their exit seniors, the seniors that are moving on that really don't have a reason to hold back in terms of giving feedback on their program, and I've always found as a coach that's valuable information moving forward with your program.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brennan.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay,
Have a good winter season.
thank you.
Kristen, are you done? Or do you have more to talk
No,
about?
I'm done.
Okay.
You checking the math over there on that? I saw
Probably
you
already
writing
figured out in
numbers.
her head.
Oh, the issue was it was cut in half for cheerleader, and the total cost wasn't cut in half.
I figured that. Ready for the Chief Financial Officer's report?
Sure.
Okay, good evening. Tonight I'd like to highlight the October 2018 financials. This is 4 months of our budget, 33% of the fiscal year. If we look at Board Book page 42 and look at the monthly summary for October, you'll see that our revenue for the month for all funds was roughly $500,000. Once again, our major revenue sources are real estate taxes and our evidence-based funding that we are receiving from the state. Our expenditures for the month were roughly $1.96 million. And in this expenditure side, our salary and benefits account for the majority of it. And I always like to highlight what our out-of-district tuition is for our special education students, which is $82,000 for the month. If we move to Board Book page 43 and look at the financial statements, the first page that you see is our fund balance. The main thing to focus in on that is our operating fund balance at the end of October is $17 million. Just a reminder that $3 million is restricted on it, so that drops it down to roughly $14 million. If we flip to the revenue side on page 44 in Board Book, you'll see that our operating revenue for the first 4 months is at 43%. That's pretty much where I expected it to be at this particular time with what our property tax collection is and what our revenue is from the state. On the expenditure side, on Board Book page 45, our operating expenditure for the first 4 months is at approximately 37% of budget. That is tracking pretty much right in line with as the previous couple of years' budgets for expenditures are. I do not see any issues currently with where we're tracking. As we move on to the revenue expense report, there were some questions submitted on the revenue expense report. The first question was on Board Book page 41 under account number 101720, which is student fees. This is actually money for band uniforms. $8,189 was deposited into the wrong account. It should have been under 104720. So there was a typo in the general ledger account. Instead of being 4720, it went in as 1720. A journal adjustment has already been done. The 4720 is career and technical education dollars that we receive from the state for Perkins. On Board Book page 54, under account number 10, 1400, 4100, 4608, and right underneath it is 617. These are both career and technical education accounts. What happened here is
Scott, are you on, give me 1
He's
second.
using the old numbers. Go
Yeah,
to
because
page
Mary Ann,
14.
you added
On
the JV tour
He's on
thing.
expenditures, page 14, if you look at the top.
Okay,
So
so then, all right, so I'm off, I'm sorry. I didn't know that there was an addition to it.
This is 59, page 59.
Page 59. But, okay, so it's both under the same function code of 1400 under the supply lines for Perkins and CTEI. On this one here, what happened is both grants were amended after our district budget was adopted. So what happens on this is if the reviewers from ISB don't allow some type of budget item that was put into the grant, we have to shift it to a different account. And the easiest account to be able to expend the money is to put it into supplies for our career and technical education programs. I just want to let everyone know that
I don't understand your explanation. Try that again. So we put in, what did we put in for?
So I'll give an example. If we put exhaust fans into our foods lab,
Okay.
and that item was not allowable per the state,
Under,
rules and regulations under Perkins
Okay.
for it. So what we had to do is take the money that was allocated for that capital item, which was a fan, or multiple fans to put into it, we had to redistribute the money out to other accounts, which happens to be the supply account. So what happened was that item didn't work, and at the time that the budget was adopted, we had capital items in there, but unfortunately, the reviewer didn't allow it, so then we had to put an amendment in on our grant and shift it from capital and move it to supplies for those particular programs.
okay.
Both these grants are reimbursable grants, so we have to spend the money and then put in for reimbursement. The biggest issue that you can get with any grant is not spending your grant money, and then that means then you would lose it and you wouldn't be able to put in for reimbursement.
Okay.
So we'll be able to recoup these funds.
We will recoup them.
Okay.
In the budget, Perkins grant has $35,000 and CTEI has $33,000. So that's what we're working with within our budget.
Got it.
What's
Thank
the
you.
next one, Scott?
I'm going to go with board book page 58.
What's the top right corner of your?
It might be 59.
Oh, 59, am I off again?
You might be adding 5 pages.
5 pages, so I'm 59. Under function, it would be account number 10-2220, 7410, which is non-cap for audiovisual equipment. The budget items
Hold
at
on,
the
Scott.
beginning.
You're on 62
62?
of the board book.
All right.
17 of your sheet. So when you see out in the top right corner of your sheet, it has the page 17.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
Can
sorry.
you read that when you go to that, so that we're not trying to add or catch up? 'Cause I think
Okay. So,
Kristen added something late, Scott. It's not your
It's my
fault.
fault.
It's Kristen's fault.
it's all right. All right, under, where are we?
You're on the last line on page
62. Yes, non-cap equipment. So the original budget items that were placed into the budget and approved beginning of the year, the items that were selected were over $1,000. When they did the pricing now, they came in under the $1,000, which therefore we couldn't capitalize them, and we had to put them under non-cap. So
Got it.
what'll happen here is the non-cap will go over budget, and the capital account will be under budget.
Okay.
Okay, that was all the questions submitted on the revenue expense report. The following report after the revenue expense report is our student activity accounts.
No questions were submitted on that?
No questions were submitted on that. And then the last report that was entered into my CFO report is the quarterly business review from Aramark. This is a very good report from Aramark showing what they do on a day-to-day basis, what items they've tackled as far as life safety, different capital projects that they're doing, and then kind of giving a timeline as to what are some of the next things that they'll be focusing on.
No questions were submitted?
No questions
Okay.
were submitted.
Anything else?
That is it for the chief financials report.
Okay. Next, we have discussion. And
Thank you. FOIA, discussion items, FOIA requests.
Mary Ann, our FOIA is back towards the beginning. Because in board book, after Scott's report, it goes to staff enrollment and
I
projections.
think they were closer to the front.
Or is that under, oh wait, Scott, you have to do, that's under your report, correct? Staff enrollment?
Yeah, that's a separate one.
Okay, but it's under you, right?
Yep.
Chief, okay, so, just to update the board, why Scott finds his page, and actually it's a little bit of Kristen, a little bit of Scott, a little bit of myself. Something I started, it was 8 years ago when I became the superintendent. The school district had always done enrollment projections from the feeder schools. So we took that a step further, and when the board was working out its financial issues, trying to identify projected staffing needed and an average class size needed, so the board would have an idea when we had to cut staff, or now over the last few years we've added back staff to try to commit to a 25-to-1 class size. So the first chart that's provided is information from Kristen, and the classes under 20 with board approval, these are the courses that align with the board policy that anything under 20 needed board approval. And so as you see, we only ran 3 courses. Pre-algebra, which is one of our requirement courses, Intro to Heritage Speakers, which is a required course under our ELO government program, our government funding program, and then German 3 AP German, which is a capstone level course in our German program. So we had several other courses that were, that did not have 20 students and did not run or were not brought to the board. Kristen, I think you had some other information. Do you want to touch anything or answer any questions that you reported in regards to the other class information you're providing?
Sure. So the next chart includes classes that were over 20 at the time when we sectioned in March, and we provided an update on where they are in October. Some of the classes that dropped below 20 were due because there was a conflict between that course and a core course that the student was required to take. We try to eliminate those as much as possible, but a lot of, like for advanced autos, for example, almost every single student conflicted out with one of their required courses. And so that's why you see the discrepancy. And then on the second page, there was a question on the second chart.
Which figured it out after I asked it.
Okay.
It was short for Shakespeare, right?
Yes, correct.
I thought you were teaching a class on shake making. I was a little worried. Or it's going to come back to high school.
Mary Ann, can you go to the next chart?
Can you answer one question, Kristen? We
Sure.
ask this all the time, and you do. So a class like advanced autos, where there's some of the kids in that type of program, they're taking more of the hands-on, however we describe them, classes. Is there periods during the day when there's no core course, and so it's easy? I mean, I know you go through a very complicated matrix of how to make this happen, but there's just probably no way to avoid certain conflicts between core courses and even some of the significant courses for people who, like this, want to be in more of the technical classes, right?
Correct, and those core courses were courses that were also only offered 1 period a day, so it wasn't like they were all offered multiple periods and we could just push that student into a different period. And we do try to avoid it as much as we can. One of the challenges with advanced autos is that on some of the elective classes, especially if they're open to all 4 grade levels, it's hard to avoid conflicts at all 4 grade levels.
Sure.
So that's where sometimes you can see a little bit of a drop. But we use that information as we try to schedule courses the following year.
Sure.
To avoid some of those conflicts that came up the previous year. The next page in board book, which I believe is page 99, is just a summary of FTE per department and then actual class averages. So we pulled this information as of October 31st to look at the number of students within each course to compute the overall class averages. So as you can see, overall class average is 26.9. And if you look at the overall class average without our 40-to-1 classes, which is typically some of our music classes as well as our PE classes, that class average is 25.38. And then core classes, math, English, science, and social studies, has a class average of 24.66. And if you look at the historical averages, you can see that they have decreased over the years.
I didn't ask it on purpose till we got here, but if somebody took a close look at the report card, it's got a class average number 2, and the state average is like 20, and ours is like a little bit higher, I think, than what it is. And would you explain again why the
Sure.
state's number is significantly different than what? I mean, there's no way that the average high school class size in the state is 20 students.
So the school report card calculates the class average by only pulling data from your second period and your fifth period.
Okay.
And then they use that information. I believe they exclude PE and study halls, if I'm remembering correctly, and then they use that information to calculate the overall class average for the entire school. So it's very different, whereas we look at every single class to calculate the class average.
Do you think in 2018 they could just use whatever data is available instead of picking 2 of them out, right? Oh, well.
So.
This is a good summary for the board. We chose the historical average. Last year, we had some unassigned FTE. This year, you can see we only have a 0.1 unassigned, but we have a total FTE of about 104.6. Next page is the feeder.
Before you move on to, you had a plan to get to the 25 over a period of time. We've
accomplished
finished that
that.
plan, right? So this is
Correct.
more in line with our expectation would be on a going forward basis then.
Right, so the next part would be enrollment projections, and then when we get to the staffing part, I'll explain that, but let Scott touch on the enrollment projections. Because now it's met, what it will cost to maintain it, or how many
Sure.
staff will need to continue to maintain that 25-to-1 average.
Okay, on the enrollment projections, using the feeder school information that we receive, incoming classes will be 90% of what our feeder enrollment would be for 8th grade. And then for each grade level moving forward, we add 1% to take into account for transfers. Transition students are included in the projection now to try to get a better handle on what our total amounts are. With it, there were some questions as to why the actual and the projected have gone up. As the transition program has grown, there has been additional students that stay on the books as transition, increasing our total for the actual.
So let's take, I think it might be easier explained if you looked at the chart on board book page 101 in FY19 or FY18. Let's go FY19 projection for the junior classes at 385, and then you see when you get to
See the
FY19 actual, it goes all the way to 430. Scott has mentioned in his bullet notes on the bottom about transition students. So remember, special ed students that receive a diploma or receive a certificate of participation have a right to stay enrolled till their 22nd birthday. So we have to account for those students, and our transition program has grown. So that's why you see a projection. That's why the senior class number is inflated. And if you look at some of the projections going forward, it's inflated as well to account because we're starting to be able to project how many 5th, 6th, students will be staying for 5, 6, 7 years.
Maybe you put a footnote on seniors and say seniors and.
Third footnote, I think transition students are included in the senior year
Actual enrollment. And then with the projection for next year is based off of what I received from our Director of Special Ed with our current transition students, and then a projection as to what they feel the current seniors, once they get their diploma, if they're going to be in the actual program, to get the total. So that's reflected in our projection for 2020, which gives the higher increase from junior year going to our senior year. And then moving forward in the
Are we
projection.
able to project the in-house for like 2020?
Yes.
We could give it's a rough estimate.
I know,
But
but
it would be,
We took out that, we did it on the next page.
Oh, you did? Okay. I thought I saw it somewhere.
yeah, it's on the next page with what we were thinking it would be. But then from 2021 through 2026, we took a 5-year kind of history on what we project out to be transition students using 18 transition students and carried that then through for the senior years, for the senior year data.
So depending on the mobility rate of people moving in the district and out of the district, if you look at 2016's attendance, and then you look at 2025, 2026, the attendance projections as of right now would show that we'd go down almost 100 students.
Right. I
But we
noticed
will
that.
have a peak in
Next
20 and 21. And we start to slowly shift back down. So the final worksheet, and this helped, as I mentioned, and I think Tim brought up a good point, this worksheet's helped the board, and it's become customary now in November where we project based on the business office's enrollment projections. We then project staffing. And so, as mentioned before, our current average is 26.9, and as you can see, that comes out to a total roughly of 104.3, the top right corner of the green box. We currently have 104.6, and if the board remembers, we did order staff an additional social worker, a part-time social worker, which is accounted for in the chart on the left. So looking at the 1709 projection and removing approximately 2.5% for both homeschooled, outplaced, and transition students, our in-house should be roughly 1666.
Okay.
If we use the 1666 and an average of 27 students in all classes, we should be staffed at approximately 106.6. And an easy way for the board to understand this, I know we've gone through this now a couple times, even the new board members, this is their second year seeing this. Basically, every 25 students accounts for one full-time FTE. So if we have an increase in roughly 50 students, which is 1611 to 1666, that's why we're going up roughly 2 FTE if we keep the 27 average. If there are concerns about staffing, we could go to 27.5, and that would be an increase of about 0.6 FTE. Now, we have 2 retirees scheduled to retire at the end of this year, and so we would basically be replacing them and then adding 2 more teachers. So some of the cost savings, basically the cost savings from the 2 retirees would go to hiring those 2 additional teachers and basically eat that up. Now,
There goes your master plan.
well, I think if you take a second and trying to disclose, be fully transparent, if you look at the years 21, 22, 23, as enrollment begins to drop, and we have retirees over the next 5 years, we should be able to also not have to replace some of those retiring teachers.
So you're saying that, we're gonna, based on these numbers, we're gonna be 106 this next year, but then we're going up.
106.
Enrollment's gonna go up the year after
It's almost
that.
the same the year after.
Year after that, it's the same, so I wouldn't see
Identical.
much of an increase. Then
Be
if
the
you start
same.
looking below that, you start
Then it
dropping.
starts coming back down.
Correct.
Then as people retire, you just don't have to replace them because
So that's where the
enrollment's
district
going
would recoup its savings from the retirements.
So in this year, 24 and 25.
Yeah, I think at 22 and 23, if you go down to 1680, so that right there, that's at least almost a 1.2, 1.4 decrease.
Yeah, but there's still more than we are this year.
Correct, but remember, now that doesn't take into account outplaced and transition, that's total. So I would assume that if you take the 2% out of that, it'd be lower than what we are this year, so we could possibly reduce by 1 teacher. So when I looked at Scott's retirement list of teachers that have put in retirement for the next 5 years, and you look at the attendance projections, the first 2 retirees that happened this year, the cost savings are eaten up by, well, there's really no change because of
It's a net.
savings. It's moved.
So here's the thought, do we have a number of special education in the feeder schools? Where's that number going?
All in there.
They look at
So we get everything. We get outplaced.
Well, it's in there, but is it, if we get a disproportionate number, if we get more special ed, we need to hire.
If you get a higher
Special ed.
transfer in rate, you mean? You could.
Right.
We also get special ed kids transferring too.
Right. Because that's kinda hard to put in that 106 if you need,
Right.
if
Right.
by law, we need to hire another
I mean, you
special
could,
ed teacher.
every year when Kristen gives us the numbers and says what her tentative class schedule is, she said it could change depending on the number of special ed kids we get and the number of transfers we get.
Wes, if you look at the sheet I gave you and just, it's easy to, if, going forward in the future, we could sit there and do the 5 years where you just take 2.5% from like the 1682 to 1688, and that'll give you an in-house number, and you could drop those numbers in my Excel sheet, and it would tell you what our FTE would be. And that's what we do in our enrollment, or our financial projections. So I think where the district, remember we talked about being able to sustain a 5-year financial projection at running a small deficit. I think where we end up recouping some savings is with the enrollments coming down in FY '22 through '25, and at the same time having, almost 2 teachers a year retiring. And so what would be ideal in those situations is if that enrollment does align with the projections, you would not have to replace the retired teacher. It's for full savings.
So the elementary school on the Brookfield side, both Gross and Brook Park, put significant additions on, but we don't think, I mean, I think we've held pretty constant. I remember seeing the numbers 1680 about 7 years ago.
The biggest thing that's
So-
impacted us is we've had a growth in our transition program.
Okay.
So that's what makes that number look high. I mean, if you look at the projection for fiscal year '20, we're at 1709, but really 1666 is what we're projecting inside. So yeah, it's an increase of 50 students. So you're starting to see some of that growth from the Hauser, had a huge junior high class over the last few years.
Right.
I think another idea, something that you could just kind of watch, is if you go back to board book page 100, this is the information that's filled out by each feeder school.
Okay.
So you can see that there are some large numbers under District 95 in grade 2, or grade 1, 2, and then again in grade 5. And so what will impact this is as we get this information every year, if there's significant changes in their transfer in, transfer out rate, right? If a lot of young families are moving into the district, these numbers can obviously increase.
Yeah, because they just, Gross has an addition and Brook Park has an addition. They've
Well, look at
kind of
their
had a little-
numbers, though.
Yeah.
Their numbers look like,
Does
well,
the
didn't they
District
just,
94 numbers take into account that bump that Kamara got from that housing development that was built?
I don't think they have any students enrolled at this time.
Okay.
But
'Cause
none
they're
of those
projecting
students,
their-
none of those students will attend RB.
Oh, they won't?
They will not.
Oh,
They go to a
okay.
proviso high school district.
Oh, all right.
So why are you seeing this in November and not closer to March when it's budget time? The idea of laying this out to you,
You're prepping us.
okay, right, I'm laying this out month by month. So when we get to February, March, April, should anything else be shifted or impacted towards us, the board is prepared for these decisions as you've direct the superintendent, and I will work with my staff to build the final budget. So when I started this trend of giving this information back in November, it was so that the board can make decisions if we were going to increase those class averages and, RIF staff or cut staff. At this point, I don't think we have to do that, but that's why you see it in November. And so it's a good worksheet to just give you an idea. It's also a good worksheet to the faculty so that they can see that the board's trying to maintain the goal of class sizes and supporting the certified staff. So.
Any other questions? Should we move on?
Can.
So we can go to discussion information items, FOIA requests.
4 FOIAs were submitted. There was 1 question submitted. The district engages in an agreement with Loyola Medical Services, but that was for more advertising rights and medical coverage at our games. We do not contract any therapy or training services. That's in-house position. The other information was requested from parents in the community about classes being offered.
I thought Loyola has provided us doctors for some of our athletic events that come in here once a week under that agreement.
The doctors come on a voluntary basis, but no students are required to. We don't exchange money for medical services. Their interns come and just do some clinical hours here, and they're attending.
I'll say what I've
we don't
said to you
contract them
before.
out.
The idea of the FOIA is to provide information that's in the government's hands that the public wants to see. It says produce all contracts or written agreements of any kind, whether in hard copy elections for athletic training,
Which we don't
or
have,
therapy
athletic
service,
training.
or therapy services.
Okay, so what's therapy services? We don't do physical therapy. We don't do any. No student is required to work with a Loyola staff member. At doctors, there is a precautionary measure, but there's no contracted therapy services where those kids are going to receive.
That takes a lot of interpretation to get into whether we should have given them the information, right? I don't see why we just didn't provide the agreement. I don't see why doesn't fit under that contract. If our outside counsel says it should, we don't give it. But it seems like we find reasons not to give information. And it's something we have in a file there. And I'm afraid sometime we're going to get caught for doing that.
Okay.
And if somebody says that and they go to the Attorney General's office and said, we asked for that, and the Attorney General says, well, athletic training and therapy services have a plain meaning. And you're narrowing it down to, we don't hire athletic trainers. That's not what they asked for. I just am concerned that, it seems like that agreement would fit into what that person asked for to me.
Okay. There were no other questions on the Freedom of Information Act. The next thing was the police radios and discussion. There was no update there.
Okay, I'll move on. And then the last is the Iasb Resolutions.
So, we received a lot of emails from community members on the Iasb resolution. So the general public understands each school board in the state of Illinois has a delegate that's assigned if the school district participates as a member of the Illinois Association of School Boards. So we have a delegate representative, that's Ms. Laura Ruska. She serves as our delegate. Every year at the school board's annual conference, resolutions are provided for the Illinois Association of School Boards to consider whether or not they want to support different resolutions or actions as a group or as the association, and whether or not they want to use the association's presence to help advocate through state and local legislation to try to get something approved. One of the resolutions that's up for review this weekend at the school board conference is resolution number 2, which talks about a Student Safety and Protection Act. And what that act, I believe it was initiated from someone in a rural school district, but I think the School Board Association is looking as whether or not they should support allowing school districts to consider arming teachers or staff members that have gone through specific training and background checks, etc. And so we received some emails this week from community members encouraging us to not support resolution number 2. And I thought, and the board president thought, it'd be appropriate to allow the board just to use this as a brief discussion item tonight to, if anybody wanted to discuss or cite their concerns or their support or whatever they have in relation to this resolution, so that Laura is clear on kind of where the board as a whole stands in regards to resolution number 2.
Well, just so everyone is aware, when these are proposed, first I'll make sure that all the appropriate documentation has been submitted and that they can even be voted on. And all that we're voting on does not mean that this is going to become law. It just means that we are saying that we want the association to lobby for this in Springfield. That this is something that they will support the lawmakers to pass legislation for. When we go to the Delegate Assembly, typically there's about 430 school districts represented. There's a little over 800 school districts in the state of Illinois. Every school district has one representative. So Chicago only has one representative, which is many as there are. One of the things I have learned is that Southern Illinois has very different needs than we do. And, you know, we have police departments across the street. We have a lot of resources where in Southern Illinois, the kids are getting on a bus and they're driving 50 miles to school. They have some of the teachers and, you know, some of the staff members doing double duty in their rural communities, and their needs are very different than our needs, even though we're one state. And so one of the things they encourage us to be open is to allow, when the appropriate measures are taken, that the schools in the southern part of the state can also function, given their resources. So I think that thus will probably be a lot of discussion on this on Saturday. And each of the districts will explain why it's important to them and what they're looking for. But
My response to the community members that submitted
Right.
emails was that as a superintendent working with the school board, the initiative of hiring a school safety liaison, which is an armed police officer in our building, and the other measures we have taken with our Raptor system, our new check-in spots, all the different safety, that would not be something as a superintendent, I don't think myself or our school board would be looking to do, is arming our staff or our teachers. But again, I think this was an opportunity, and that's how I responded to those emails, but then I also made clear that I can't speak for the entire board, so we could use this opportunity just to make sure Laura's clear on what direction the board would like her to proceed on Saturday.
Because voting for the resolution does not in any way take away local control. It does not in any way impose anything upon us. What it gives is it gives control, like let's say to a downstate district whose nearest law enforcement is 30 minutes away. It gives them the ability to choose for themselves. Is that right, Laura?
It gives the direction to our lobbyists to tell our lawmakers this is something we'd like to happen. We're not voting anything into law. We're just directing the association to lobby for this.
Assuming a majority of our board members say
Right.
go that
Right.
way.
Right.
And a majority of the
Right.
members at the meeting
Right.
agree to adopt it.
So if they agree to adopt it among the 400 boards there, all it does is it tells the Association of School Boards that this is important to all the schools in Illinois. We want you to tell the legislators in Springfield to pass this, to allow every school district to make up their own safety rule, right here, you know, the safety plans, safety and protection plans.
Well, I will tell you what my position on it is. It's ridiculous. I think teachers should teach, administrators should administer. I think overall the odds of there being a shooting in the school is low. You need to protect against it. That's what we did. I understand it's different in other areas, but I'll tell you the other perspective. My father was a deputy superintendent of the Chicago Police Department. I can remember one time he was telling me a story, like 10 policemen shot at one guy 71 times and nobody hit him. And these are people who are supposed to be trained to do it. I think you're at a bigger risk of having staff walking around with guns, of having them taken from them or being shot or a kid shot than you do knowing whether somebody who passed a test and can hit a target with a gun is actually going to be there and be able to shoot at somebody else and hit them and not somebody else to stop it. I think the odds of this being helpful are a lot less than the odds of the risk of having teachers or administrators walking around with guns, and also I think they should do the job they're there for and not be worried about it. I think this is a bad idea.
Okay,
And I
so-
don't care where the school district is.
Okay, so Tim would say Laura votes no. Gina?
I mean, it's hard because is that something I would support here? Never. But do I feel adequately prepared to make a decision for a district that's downstate? Like, no, I believe very strongly in local control and they having the control to make the decision what's best for them. So voting yes for this just simply says that the IASB would advocate to the legislator to let them make their own decisions.
Yeah, I mean, the sentence
Right?
says.
Like, is that
right.
a fair?
Yes, because it says, the Association of School Boards shall support and advocate for legislation which provides local school boards the option of developing students' safety and protection plans, which may include teachers carrying guns. May include.
Well, you don't need to pass a resolution to the first one. It's required under statute to
Right.
have a safety and
Right.
protection plan. So you don't have to, you can take that part. It may include them to give them the right to do that.
Right. I mean, this state is a conceal and carry. I think this is probably why maybe this is coming up. I don't know. You know, it's, if you're not in the city, I can't imagine us ever needing that here.
Right.
You know, that's not our world. But I'm not in southern Illinois where it's 50 miles to the closest police station.
Yeah, like when I put my administrator hat on and I think if the safety and security of the students and staff is my responsibility and law enforcement is 30 minutes away, and granted, that's not the situation here. I agree with Laura, like, we're not in that situation, so I would never in a million years support that for us, ever.
Right.
I don't know, because I read through it and I kind of highlighted, because it says that, you know, in very clear language, that if the resolution were adopted, it would not compel or require any school district or school board to develop or implement any such trained or armed staff plan. So even if we voted yes for this, this does not mean in any way, shape, or form that we would support that here, because I wouldn't.
You know,
I know that's like splitting hairs, but.
I have like no interest in
Yeah, what do you
arming teachers. I think.
No,
I think
and I
it's-
don't either.
I don't think, and I think we could pool the teachers and we'd get 100% no interest.
Oh, I
But-
agree.
But having said that, we have Lane, we have an armed person in the.
We have a
person.
police
So if we
station
had
2
a
minutes
teacher
away.
that came up and said, oh, I've got my license for this and I've got my training for this
Yeah,
and I'm a
yeah.
reserve officer with the Riverside and Brookfield Police, well, then maybe he could petition us and maybe we'd say no, but, you know, that, I think that's his right, and I don't want to take that away from him.
But we'd have the right to entertain that.
We
So-
would have, and we'd
so
have the
that's
right to
what
say
this-
no.
Right,
But-
Right,
but
that's all
he-
this is saying.
right,
but
that's all this
if-
is saying, is
right,
that we'd
so-
have the right to entertain that.
But isn't there another,
Right.
is there another simple way of looking at it? First of all, most of the resolutions the IASB supports, a lot of them never get anywhere in the legislature.
Yeah.
Right? You know that.
Absolutely.
In fact,
Absolutely.
the great majority of them
Right,
don't.
right.
And if this is really important to people in the rural area, they don't need the IASB to do it.
Correct.
They have to
Right.
go to their own legislature and
Right.
say, this is really important to us. And instead of bringing in people from other districts that don't think it's a good idea, let them lobby with their own legislators and get the thing passed.
It's a fair point.
I don't know why the IASB is getting involved in this.
The ISB is not getting involved. What the ISB allows every school district is to submit a resolution, and this school district submitted a resolution.
Right.
It's they have that privilege to do that, and that's what they submitted, and it's come to the floor. They filed all the appropriate papers.
Well, let me flip it the other way.
I certainly won't want to pay any money.
Recently, they had
Recently, there's no way.
Recently, they had a resolution that they wanted to, somebody had a resolution, or there was a bill, that the minimum pay for teachers should be at least $35,000.
$40,000.
Starting at 35 and going to 40 over a number of years. The ISB was against that idea, because let the local people do what they want. I mean, I think it's more important that we pay teachers enough money to want people to teach, which isn't a problem in our district, than it is that we take a position on whether there should be teachers walking around with the guns in the schools that they're not paying them $35,000 a year. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, so, I mean, however the board wants to go, it's a board decision.
I think Laura's looking just for some direction
Yeah.
how she wants to vote as our delegate.
I say no.
Okay.
It's a fair point, Tim, that they have another avenue to take.
Yeah,
So knowing they do have another avenue to take,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I don't
I
think
guess
we
no.
should ask
I guess
somebody to
no, Laura.
lobby to do that.
right,
I'd vote no.
yeah, I
Okay, there
guess
you
no.
go.
Okay.
Okay? And so,
I
as I
appreciate
stated,
the discussion.
Yeah.
well, as I stated earlier, I think we received a lot of public comments.
Yeah.
And so, just some emails from community members, and the board president asked that we put it on as a discussion item. Tim, can we move on?
Yeah. Unless our attorney reporter want to make comments, we can skip that part.
No visitor statements.
So no visitor statement. Are there any items that members would like to add for discussion?
I just want to make a comment. So I had the opportunity to go to the play, and I thought it was just adorable. Brought my grandson, everything was beautiful, the costumes were beautiful, students did a fantastic job. Just, share that information. Really, it was really well done.
And I think it was double casted, so we had double the amount of students participating, correct?
Some roles were double casted, but we also had a lot more students participate in the tech crew this year than we have before in the
Good.
past.
So I have to get my grandson his unbirthday gift. So I was going to try and find the picture book to Alice in Wonderland for his unbirthday gift.
Consent?
Gina, you don't have anything you want to add? Okay. Consent agenda items are approval of the minutes, regular October 9, open and closed, and committee of the whole and special meeting on October 23rd, open and close. Does somebody want to read the resolution? It's right up on the
Yeah,
screen.
it's up there. Yeah. Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School, District 208, Cook County, Illinois, hereby takes the following action on the listed consent agenda items. Approves minutes from the meetings held on October 9th and 23rd, 2018, open and closed, as presented and amended in the November 13th, 2018 Board Agenda Packet.
Is there a second?
Second.
Did you get that, Mary Ann? Would you take the vote, please?
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Ms. Sierra?
Yes.
Mr. Smithing?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes. That moves us on to old business action items, life safety items, capital improvements.
No action on this. I just wanted to update on page 160 in the board packet in front of you in the computer is this reconciliation for remaining life safety work. As you can see, Joel and his staff are working with local subcontractors to get a lot of the projects addressed. Our big chunk of projects will occur this summer with the roof unit replacement for the pool, but we're still tracking to where even with remaining life safety, both funded and funded work, we should still have, we're on projection to have a slight surplus in our life safety dollars. So Joel's done a really nice job with that.
The next item is the electricity contract.
After further review, we're only going to bring the electricity contract to the board. We have one more year remaining on the gas contract, and we thought it'd be in our best interest to wait and not do an early release from that contract. Scott and his, our district council went through this contract several times, back and forth. We believe this is the best contract for the district. We had one typo. Scott, where was that typo?
On the savings part for the cost.
On page
Potential
162?
savings under year one.
Okay, and
With
corrected
just
is-
transposed the 6 and the 0. But potentially, if we have the same annual usage, potentially we can have savings of roughly $24,800.
We're gonna do a 3-year fixed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And between you and our outside counsel, you got all the language fixed the way we want.
All the language was fixed that was in question
Okay.
with the current contract.
So if we could have a resolution to approve this tonight?
Do you want to, should I read it?
If you don't mind.
Okay. Resolved that the Board of Education Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves a 36-month term agreement with IGS for an electricity supply contract as presented in the November 13, 2018 Board Agenda Packet.
Second.
Before we vote on it, I think I forgot to say this, we should put in the resolution that the term begins June of 2019, so that people know what we're approving. Do you mind adding that to it?
Sure.
So, Mary Ann, could you put in there 36-month term agreement beginning June 2019? Is that okay with you, Wes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
You said June 19, okay, yeah,
June of
because we're
next
flipping
year,
over.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Got it.
Yeah, so our
Yeah.
old contract runs out and the new one will start in
Right.
June.
Okay.
Any questions or comments besides what Gina?
I think we've looked this
All right,
over.
Mary Ann.
Ms. Sierra?
Yes.
Mr. Smithing?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
That brings us to new business, payment of bills.
Scott, please go through just the bills that had questions.
Okay. Just want to make sure my pages match. They should.
I'm sure they don't, so let's
I guess
look
not.
at your first page and tell me what number you're looking at, and we'll get you going from there. Because Kristen messed you up tonight.
That's all right. We'll get this. I had 165, but
So is that the first page is 169?
Is it 4?
yeah, starting at 170.
5.
Okay, so 5 pages.
So 5 pages. Okay, board book page 170 under milk service. We had our 2009 bus that the district owns in for the annual routine maintenance and safety check. After this was completed, the bus needed brakes, new tires, and a new wheel hub assembly kit.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Board book page 171. Cooperative Association for Special Education. This is our cooperative that we belong to for low incident service. They supply hearing, vision, and mobility service to our special education students. This is a different cooperative that provides this than LADSI with the services.
okay.
On the same, is it the same page?
I think it's the next page.
No, it's the same page for Domlin Brothers for band uniforms. We had to void the check that was used from last year's budget. It was a stale check. We didn't receive the actual invoice from the company, and then we had to void that, so there was a credit in our current budget, and then we reissued the check. They broke it up into 2 different invoices. One invoice was strictly for the uniforms, and the other invoice was for the accessories that went along with it, which was the hats, the bags, and the embroidery kits.
Thank you.
Keep going, Scott.
Board book page 174, I believe, under Futures Technology Systems. Our cafeteria sound system needed improvements. In order to meet the new wireless microphone standards, the sound system had to be updated.
So what was happening is when we have the administrative staff goes through and they make announcements to the 400 or so students in the cafeteria, why they were trying to use that, if the announcements were going on in the PA, or there was interference and problems, so kids weren't able to get the information. Also, that's what a lot of our activities, we use the lunches to recruit kids to join clubs and activities. So we got some money from the activity program as well.
Yes. On the same page, under Grand Prairie Transit, this was the September monthly bill for our special education transportation. The 2018-19 cost that we have for transportation will be reimbursable in FY20. On the same page, under Guard 911, setup, activation, and monthly fee. Guard 911 is a mobile emergency alert systems application that is available to all staff members on their smartphones to be able to send and receive emergency alerts in case there's anything that happens within our building.
So we just implemented this year.
Okay.
We just went through a big meeting with all the chiefs and fire chiefs in the new 911 dispatch center. So we have call buttons, as you see over Mary Ann's left shoulder, that teachers have in their classroom. But we went a step further and set up this app, so it's an app that's on anybody's smartphone. We have to register the staff to use it, but then if they're not near that call button or can't access that call button, they can pull out their smartphone, and there's a 911 app that they just push this button and it goes to the dispatch center in North Riverside. So it's another safety intervention we put in place.
Can they then send messages? Can you use it to send messages?
The
We can use
administration
it from the administration to out blast messages just to the teachers that are on it.
Oh, thank you.
Board book page 179, under zones. If you remember back, we were having some issues at registration getting our Chromebooks in to actually hand them out to the kids. And we had extra Chromebooks from zones. This was our credit that we received from them for sending back the excess ones that we didn't need.
Thank you.
Is that all the bills questions?
We had one more from board book page 193 under David Weissar, reimbursement. He attended the Illinois College Automotive Instruction Association Conference in Godfrey, Illinois. All costs associated with attending the conference were paid using the College and Career Education Grant.
Is he a staff member?
Yes, he's our auto teacher and wood shop.
I looked it up.
Yeah, he's on it.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, the next item, Mr. Walsh, that we have brought forward is the PTAB resolution.
Do we have to vote on this?
We do. Oh, we have to vote on the
Vote on
bills.
the
I'm
board
sorry.
bills.
Yes, on the bills, right?
Thank you for catching that.
Okay.
I was thinking of it.
Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois, hereby approves the payment of bills as presented and listed in the November 13th, 2018 Board Agenda Packet.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mary Ann?
Mr. Smithing?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Ms. Sierra?
Yes.
PTAB resolution, in September of 2013, the school district put together a property tax appeals cooperative. So us, the North Riverside Library Board, District 96 are the three groups that signed the agreement. And what we do is when property tax appeals are filed for the mall or stores in the mall, the three of us use Frantic to represent, use one legal source to represent us in those property tax appeals, and then we split the cost of the legal fees as they apply to us in regards to our tax bill. And this has worked out well because then instead of three different public bodies using three different attorneys, so we recently brought that group together just to get an idea of where we're at in property tax appeals. There are still a few pending appeals, but every 3 years we have to approve this resolution so that the cooperative and the legal firm can still represent us.
Go for the resolution?
If you don't mind.
Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois, hereby approve the PTAB resolution authorizing Frantic
Radley.
I'd like to intervene on all 2017 through 2019 PTAB assessment appeals as presented in the November 13th, 2018 board agenda packet.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mary Ann?
No discussion? We had it?
Sorry, you want to have a discussion?
No, I was just making sure nobody else did because we're on the roll. Okay,
Wes, do you have anything you want to discuss?
No?
Okay.
okay,
I think that one's pretty straightforward.
okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Ms. Sierra?
Yes.
Mr. Smithing?
Yes.
The last thing presented tonight is the first read of the tax levy. Since it's just a first read, I just want to provide a brief summary for the board, make sure they review it, and then you can bring your questions in December when we need to approve it. The key thing is, we have a lot of other boxes of information on there, but if you look at board book page 205, there's 3 boxes that are highlighted in gray. And for the community watching this, these are the 3 boxes that really apply to the school district. The first gray box or shaded column going down, the draft levy shows you exactly the extension we received from Cook County for tax year 2017 payable in 2018. The second box is a projection if the district were to receive the full 4.95% that it's levying. Now, we can levy 4.95%, anything under 5% every year without a special vote. And the only reason you do that is to make sure you're capturing any values from any new property so that you're picking up any additional property taxes you're supposed to.
You meant to say what a public hearing.
At a public hearing. Without a public hearing, anything under 5%.
Right.
The third box is reality. Usually you get from Cook County, the CPI, the inflation factor, and then they usually put in a loss factor, which is about 3% for any lost or unpaid property taxes. So the third box is a projection of what we'll probably end up receiving in FY19.
Above and beyond what we can get in the current.
It's what we would receive, yeah, $412,000 from what we received in that first gray box in 2018. So the levy the board is actually approving is the middle gray box, which is the BOE levy to be submitted to Cook County, increased by 4.95%. Scott, did you receive any questions on that information?
No, but I do want to say, though, with the 4.95% levying, that would capture any of the new EAV that would come on the books. So it's roughly, the district would capture roughly about 20 to 22,000 per every million EAV that comes on the books.
Okay, so the board will take action on this at the December board meeting. And we do need to approve it in December. And Scott takes it down to county the next day. Okay?
Any questions today? We could talk about it again next time anyway.
Scott, are we having a public hearing on the levy?
Yes, I will have public notice going out to the newspaper that'll run on November 28th, and we will be having a public hearing on December 11th.
So, to correct, we don't have to have a public hearing because we're not trying to
We're under
increase it by more
5%.
than 5%, but we do it anyway.
Okay.
Just to give people a chance if they want to have some say in
I
it.
guess you just have to explain to me how this works here, because I know we spend a lot more money than that on special education. We just don't get that much money?
This is what we levy. So what you levy is what portion of the tax bill that you receive will go directly to that. A majority of what we spend on special education comes out of the education fund.
Because the teachers and so forth.
Correct.
That makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
I just wanted to...
Yeah, the special ed levy only covers a portion of what you truly spend for that particular program.
One student, one of our outplaced students.
Okay, so now we move on to matters for closed section, which are personnel, student discipline, individual student matters, sale or lease of property, pending or imminent litigation, collective negotiations, and school safety. I don't see any new visitors, so we'll skip the visitor statement section. There were no discussion items requested. Is there any consideration of items that people would like included on the agenda in future meetings? Nope. Nobody? Okay. Somebody want to read the resolution to go into closed session?
Resolved that the Board of Education Township High School District, School District 208, Cook County, Illinois, enters closed session for the purpose of considering appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, or legal counsel for the public body, student discipline, purchase or lease of real property, probable, imminent, or pending litigation, collective negotiations, and school safety.
Second.
You know what, we need to change that. Do you mind if we say purchase, sale, or lease?
Purchase, sale, or lease of real property?
Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Sure.
Because that's what we're going to talk about, so.
Mhm.
Mary Ann?
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Ms. Sierra?
Yes.
Mr. Smithing?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Normal travel?
5 minutes or so, that's it for everybody?
Enough time, Todd?